The scream pierced the fluorescent-lit underground parking garage. "Help my mom! They beat my mom!" The little girl's desperate voice bounced off concrete walls as she clutched at her mother's limp form. Blood trickled from the woman's temple, her expensive suit now crumpled against the cold floor beside a luxury sedan. Three men in black suits stood blocking the car faces impassive in the harsh light. She deserved this lesson. A deep voice cut through the tension from behind them. The real lesson is for cowards. A man in maintenance coveralls stepped forward, his toolbox making a definitive thud as he set it down. He removed his work gloves deliberately, revealing scarred hands and eyes cold as steel. In 5 seconds, all three assailants were on the ground, their bodies crumpled in awkward angles, expressions frozen in confusion about what had just happened. The maintenance worker knelt beside the injured woman, his movements precise and practiced. "Stay calm. I know how to stop the bleeding." His fingers expertly applied pressure to the wound, his other hand reaching for supplies from his toolbox with practiced efficiency. The little girl watched tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, wake up." When the man looked up, face glistening with sweat, the injured woman's eyes fluttered open momentarily. Recognition flickered across her features. That man was Ethan Ward, 38 years old, former head of internal safety at Grant Tech Corporation, the very company where Sophia Grant served as CEO. The very same Sophia Grant who had terminated his employment 2 years ago after a workplace accident. The very same Sophia Grant who now lay bleeding in his arms. Ethan hadn't hesitated when he heard the child's cry. His military training had kicked in automatically, assess, act, protect. 8 years as a Navy SEAL had hardened his instincts, particularly in rescue operations and battlefield medicine. He transferred those skills to the corporate world until that fateful day when following protocol would have meant letting someone die. 2 years ago, the explosion had rocked the east wing of Grant Tech's manufacturing plant. Alarms blared as smoke filled the corridors. Protocol dictated securing the prototype equipment, first millions in proprietary technology at risk. But Ethan had heard the screams. A technician trapped beneath collapsed shelving flames approaching. The division head had barked the order. "Secure the prototypes, we'll come back for him." Ethan had ignored the command, rushing instead toward the screams. He dragged the technician to safety, suffering burns on his hands in the process. The man lived. The prototypes were destroyed. The cost $7 million in equipment, 3 months of research data. The termination paper had landed on his desk the next morning. Sophia's signature at the bottom, her words still clear in his memory. "Safety is about protocols, not personal heroics, Ward. We can't retain employees who can't follow the rules." Ethan's response had been quiet but firm. "Safety is about people, not paperwork. Someday you'll understand that." Now Ethan lived with his daughter Leah, 8 years old, a small girl with serious eyes who always carried the old first aid kit he had given her. Every morning over breakfast in their modest apartment, Leah would ask the same question, "Dad, if I see someone fall down, should I help them?" And Ethan would always answer the same way. "Yes, you should, but remember to look around first." Helping people isn't about being a hero. It's about not leaving anyone behind. Those words had echoed in his mind when he heard Emma Grant's cries for help in the parking garage. He had acted on instinct, neutralizing the threat, stabilizing Sophia, staying until the ambulance arrived. When Sophia regained consciousness briefly, the overhead lights cast strange patterns on the ambulance ceiling. The first face she saw was his, both strange and familiar. "You still remember how to save people?" she whispered, confusion and pain clouding in her eyes. "I haven't forgotten anything that could save someone," he replied simply. Little Emma squeezed her mother's hand, voice trembling. "Mommy, he saved you." Ethan nodded once, then left his old ID badge, stained now with Sophia's blood, on the stretcher table, before walking away, disappearing into the night, before the police could ask too many questions. Sophia Grant had built Grant Tech from a small startup into a technological powerhouse. At 38, she was one of the youngest female CEOs in the industry, known for her razor-sharp business acumen and uncompromising leadership style. 4 years ago, her husband Michael had died in a car accident, leaving her to raise Emma alone, while steering the company through increasingly competitive markets. She had cultivated a reputation for being cold decisive, placing profit margins above all else. The business press called her the Ice Queen of Silicon Valley, a nickname she privately resented but publicly embraced. Better to be feared than underestimated. Better to be respected than liked. But behind closed doors, Sophia struggled with loneliness, with guilt over the limited time she spent with Emma, with the constant pressure to prove herself in an industry dominated by men. Her penthouse apartment offered spectacular views, but felt empty most nights, filled with expensive furniture but few personal touches. The only photographs showed her and Emma, their smiles becoming more forced with each passing year. 3 days after the attack, Sophia found herself driving to a small auto repair garage in a working-class neighborhood across town. No executive suit today, just jeans and a simple blouse, her bruised face partially hidden behind large sunglasses. She sat in her car gathering courage, watching as Ethan knelt beside an old Chevy, his hands covered in engine oil. No suit anymore, no power, just a man doing honest work. Beside him sat Leah, her legs swinging from a wooden stool, carefully coloring in a book, occasionally looking up to ask her father questions about the engine. Sophia watched their interaction, the gentle patience in Ethan's explanations, the trust in Leah's eyes, the comfortable rhythm of their relationship. Something tightened in her chest. When she finally approached, Ethan didn't seem surprised to see her. He wiped his hands on a rag, his expression unreadable. "I came to thank you," Sophia said, her voice less commanding than usual. He replied softly, "Thanks won't make wounds heal faster." "Why did you help me?" "Because once I failed when I couldn't help someone in time." Leah looked up from her coloring book, asking quietly, "Dad, is that person okay now?" Ethan glanced at Sophia, something unreadable passing between them. "Now they are." Later that evening, Sophia sat in her home office, turning Ethan's old ID badge in her hands. The badge was worn corners, bent dried blood still visible on the edge. She traced her finger over his name, Ethan Ward, Safety Director, the title she had stripped from him. Outside her window, the city lights blurred through unexpected tears. For the first time in 2 years, she wondered if she had been wrong, not just about firing him, but about what safety really meant. Not protocols on paper, not damage control after disasters, but people like Ethan who ran toward danger when everyone else ran away. She closed the desk drawer softly, the ID badge hidden from sight, but impossible to forget. Emma appeared at the door in her pajamas, hugging her stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, are you still hurt?" Sophia mustered a smile. "I'm feeling better, sweetheart. Come here." Emma climbed onto her lap, careful to avoid the bandage on her mother's temple. "Did the bad men want to hurt you because you're the boss?" The question stunned Sophia. She'd been asking herself the same thing, reviewing security footage, wondering why 3 professional-looking men had targeted her specifically. It hadn't felt like a random attack or robbery attempt. Nothing was stolen. It felt like a message. "I don't know, sweetie, but the police are looking into it. That man who helped us, he used to work for you." Sophia hesitated. "Yes, a long time ago." Emma's eyes, so innocent yet perceptive, locked onto hers. "Then why did he help?" The question hung in the air, challenging all of Sophia's assumptions about human nature, about business, about the walls she'd built between herself and others. The next morning, Sophia returned to the garage with coffee and pastries. Ethan looked up from under the hood of a Mustang, surprise briefly crossing his features, before his expression returned to neutral. "I looked into your file," Sophia said, setting the coffee on a nearby workbench. "The accident that got you fired, you saved someone's life that day and broke company protocol doing it. The protocol was wrong." He wiped his hands on a rag, finally meeting her eyes. "You signed the termination paper yourself." "I know," her voice cracked slightly. "I know I did." Leah peeked around the corner of the garage office, then ran over with a bright smile. "Dad, is this the brave lady you saved?" Sophia knelt down to Leah's level, wincing slightly from her injuries. "Your dad's the brave one, sweetie." "I know," Leah beamed. "He saves everybody. He was a soldier before, and he showed me how to make bandages and stop bleeding and everything." Sophia glanced up at Ethan, who shrugged. "She asks a lot of questions. I figure better to teach her than have her learn the wrong way." "She's what, 7, 8, Ethan corrected. "Old enough to know how to help if she needs to." Watching Ethan with his daughter Sophia felt something shift inside her. This man whom she had dismissed as insubordinate, as a liability, had created something she hadn't. Despite all her success, a relationship built on trust, on teaching, on preparing for the real world rather than hiding from it. While Leah showed Emma her coloring books, Sophia lowered her voice. "The men who attacked me, I think it might be connected to something at work." Ethan's expression hardened. What kind of something? I've found some documents about safety violations at our Texas facility. Serious ones that were covered up. I was looking into them. And then you got jumped in a parking garage. Ethan's jaw tightened. Convenient timing. I need to know more about what happened 2 years ago. The real story, not what's in the official report. Why ask me? You made it clear my perspective wasn't valuable. Ethan's words cut deep, but Sophia pressed on. Because I think I made a mistake. And I think there might be more mistakes I don't even know about. Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden squeal of tires. A dark sedan accelerated toward the open garage door where they stood talking. Ethan reacted instantly, shoving Sophia sideways, then lunging for the children. They tumbled behind a heavy tool cabinet as the car smashed into the garage entrance, sending tools and parts flying before reversing and speeding away. In the chaos, Sophia found herself curled protectively around Emma, while Ethan shielded both children with his body. The moment stretched, hearts pounding, dust settling. Finally, Ethan moved, checking everyone for injuries. "You okay?" he asked Sophia, his voice calm despite what had just happened. She nodded, too shocked to speak. Emma clung to her, trembling. Leah appeared remarkably composed. "Dad, that wasn't an accident, was it?" "No, sweetheart, it wasn't." Ethan's eyes scanned the garage, assessing damage and potential threats with military precision. As they gathered themselves, Sophia noticed a piece of paper that had been thrown into the garage, a note weighed down with a spark plug. She picked it up, hands shaking slightly. "Stop investigating, or next time there won't be a warning." The police arrived 20 minutes later, but Sophia could tell they weren't taking the incident seriously. "Just a hit and run, ma'am, probably teenagers. We'll file a report." After they left, Sophia turned to Ethan, who was already starting to clean up the damage to his workplace. "Those men in the parking garage, this car, someone's sending me a message." Ethan straightened, his expression grim. "Seems like you kicked a hornet's nest. I've been looking into past accidents at Grant Tech. There's a pattern of cover-ups going back years before I was even CEO. Something about the Texas plant explosion didn't add up. The same explosion that had cost Ethan his job." Ethan's eyes narrowed. What exactly didn't add up? Sophia hesitated, then decided to trust him completely. "The official report blamed the technician you saved, said he violated safety protocols, caused the fire. But I found emails suggesting the safety systems had been deactivated for maintenance that day, maintenance that should have required evacuating that entire section." "Who authorized that?" Ethan asked, though his expression suggested he already suspected. "Charles Reynolds, Vice President of Operations, your direct superior at the time." Understanding dawned on Ethan's face. "And the person who recommended my termination most strongly." Sophia nodded. "The same person who just became acting head of safety last month." For a moment, neither spoke, the implications hanging between them. Then Ethan looked at the two girls now sitting together on Leah's stool, Emma showing Leah something on her tablet. "They're after you because you know too much," Ethan said quietly, "and they're not above using violence. I need to know everything you remember about that day, about Reynolds, about the safety protocols that were supposedly in place." Ethan studied her face, looking for sincerity, for trustworthiness. "Why come to me? Why now?" "Because you were right." Sophia's admission cost her, but she forced the words out. "Safety is about people, not paperwork. And I think people are getting hurt because I forgot that." The next day, Ethan received an unexpected visitor at the garage. Sophia's assistant, Bradley, looked distinctly uncomfortable in the working-class neighborhood, his tailored suit and polished shoes marking him as an outsider. "See, Grant asked me to deliver these to you." Bradley handed over a thick folder. "They're the maintenance records for the Texas plant from 2 years ago. She thought you might want to review them before your meeting." Ethan took the folder, noticing how Bradley's eyes widened slightly at his oil-stained hands. "Tell her I'll look them over." After Bradley departed, Ethan opened the folder at his workbench. Inside were not just maintenance records, but internal emails, inspection reports, and most damning, a memo from Reynolds instructing maintenance to expedite procedures by bypassing certain safety protocols during the upgrade. That evening, with Leah at a friend's house for dinner, Ethan spread the documents across his small kitchen table. When a knock came at his apartment door, he wasn't surprised to find Sophia standing there, Emma at her side. "I see you got the files," Sophia said, noticing the papers. "Come in." Ethan stepped aside. "I was just connecting some dots." Emma brightened when she spotted Leah's collection of colored pencils on the coffee table. Can I draw while you talk? Ethan nodded, setting her up with paper and supplies while Sophia gravitated toward the kitchen table and its damning display. For the next hour, they pieced together what had really happened 2 years ago. Reynolds had been under pressure to meet production deadlines for a major client. The safety upgrades would have required shutting down production for 3 days. Instead, he'd ordered a partial bypass, creating the conditions that led to the explosion. And he blamed the technician, Sophia said, disgust evident in her voice, made him the scapegoat. And when I broke protocol to save him, I became the next convenient target. Sophia's gaze fell on a particular document, the termination notice with her signature. I trusted Reynolds. I believed what he told me about you. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Finally, he asked, what changed? Why investigate now? Last month, I found irregularities in the safety records for our Chicago plant. Small things at first, inspection dates that didn't match signatures from engineers who weren't on site. Then I discovered an entire section of safety violations that had been systematically buried by Reynolds and others. There's a culture of cutting corners, of prioritizing production over safety. I built that culture, Ethan. Her admission clearly pained her. I rewarded managers who delivered results without asking how they achieved them. Ethan studied her, seeing past the CEO exterior to the woman beneath one clearly wrestling with her role in creating a dangerous system. What happens now, he asked. I take these to the board, show them what's been happening, make changes from the top down. And if Reynolds finds out, that's why I came to you first. I need to understand exactly what happened from someone who was there, someone who sees what I missed. Their discussion was interrupted by Emma's voice. Mommy, look what I drew. The little girl held up a colorful drawing of 4 stick figures holding hands, 2 tall, 2 small, standing in front of what looked like a building. That's you. She pointed at one tall figure with long brown hair. And that's Ethan, and that's me, and that's Leah. And that's our new safety school where people learn not to get hurt. Sophia glanced at Ethan, something unspoken passing between them. Out of the mouths of babes. The following morning, Sophia walked into the Grant Tech executive offices with renewed purpose. Her assistant Bradley jumped up as she passed. Ms. Grant, Mr. Reynolds called an emergency board meeting at 10. He says it's about unauthorized access to confidential files. Sophia's steps faltered only slightly. When? 20 minutes ago. Everyone's gathering in the main boardroom. Thank you, Bradley. Sophia continued to her office, shutting the door behind her. She'd known confrontation was inevitable, but hadn't expected Reynolds to move so quickly. Someone must have tipped him off, perhaps Bradley himself, or someone monitoring the file access logs. She quickly backed up key documents to her personal drive, then selected specific emails to forward to her private account and Ethan's. As she worked, her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Be careful. These people already tried violence once. The boardroom fell silent as Sophia entered. Around the large mahogany table sat 12 board members and executives with Charles Reynolds standing at the head remote control in hand. On the large screen behind him was an image from a security camera, Sophia handing documents to Bradley in the parking garage. Ah, Sophia, Reynolds said, his smooth voice belying the tension in the room. We were just discussing a concerning security breach, Charles. Sophia took her seat at the opposite end of the table, maintaining her composure. What exactly is the concern? Reynolds clicked the remote, advancing to another image, Bradley passing documents to Ethan. These confidential company documents appear to be finding their way into unauthorized hands, specifically the hands of a disgruntled former employee. I authorize that access as part of an internal review, Sophia stated calmly. As CEO, I have that authority. Reynolds smiled thinly. An internal review that somehow bypassed both the safety department, which I now oversee, and legal. That's highly irregular, Sophia. One of the board members, Janet Winters, leaned forward. What exactly are you investigating, Sophia? Before Sophia could answer, Reynolds interjected. She's sharing sensitive company information with Ethan Ward, who was terminated 2 years ago for violating safety protocols, the very protocols he was hired to enforce. A man with an obvious grudge against this company. Sophia kept her voice steady. I'm investigating a pattern of safety violations in subsequent cover-ups at multiple Grant Tech facilities. Violations that put our workers at risk and our company in legal jeopardy. Murmurs spread around the table. Reynolds' smile faltered slightly. And what does this have to do with Ethan Ward? Asked Michael Chen, another board member. Mr. Ward was wrongfully terminated after the Texas incident. He was made a scapegoat for decisions made by others, specifically decisions to bypass safety systems during an upgrade. Reynolds' face hardened. That's a serious accusation, Sophia. One I hope you can substantiate. I can. Sophia opened her laptop. Would you like to see the emails ordering maintenance staff to expedite procedures by bypassing safety interlocks? Or perhaps the falsified inspection reports submitted after the fact? The room grew tense as Reynolds and Sophia locked eyes across the table. Finally, Janet Winters broke the silence. I think we should continue this discussion in executive session, she said carefully. Charles, Sophia, please give us the room. Outside in the hallway, Reynolds cornered Sophia by the water cooler. You're making a serious mistake, he hissed. You have no idea what you're meddling with. I know exactly what I'm doing, Charles. Cleaning up my company. His expression darkened. Your company. Don't forget who brought you in, who mentored you, who made you. You didn't make me, Charles. You used me. There's a difference, she stepped closer. And if anything happens to me, any more accidents, everything I've found goes public instantly. For a brief moment, something dangerous flashed in Reynolds' eyes. Then he composed himself, straightening his tie. The board won't side with you on this. You're throwing away your career on a crusade. Maybe, but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. When they were called back into the boardroom 30 minutes later, Sophia could tell from the expressions that the discussion had been heated. Janet Winter spoke first. The board has some concerns about these allegations, she said carefully. We've decided to place both of you on administrative leave pending an independent investigation. Reynolds began to protest, but Janet held up her hand. This isn't negotiable, Charles. The claims are too serious to ignore, and we need objective eyes on this. During the investigation, neither of you will have access to company systems or facilities. As they left the meeting, Sophia felt strangely unburdened, despite the effect of suspension. She had finally taken a stand. Whether she won or lost, she'd done what was right. Her victory was short-lived. By evening, her corporate credit cards had been frozen, and security had escorted her from the building with only her personal belongings. When she arrived home, she found a notice that access to her company-owned apartment would be terminated within 48 hours, a clause in her contract she'd never anticipated needing to worry about. Emma looked up from her homework at the dining room table, sensing her mother's distress. What's wrong, Mommy? Sophia forced a smile. Just some work trouble, sweetheart. We might need to stay somewhere else for a few days. Like where I'm not sure yet. Sophia hadn't anticipated being effectively homeless. The corporate apartment had been part of her compensation package, and most of her liquid assets were tied up in company stock she couldn't currently access. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Turn on the news. She grabbed the remote, switching to a local station. There on screen was her own face beneath the headline, Grant Tech CEO suspended amid allegations of corporate espionage. The reporter's voice filled the living room. Sources within Grant Tech confirm that CEO Sophia Grant has been placed on administrative leave following accusations that she shared confidential company information with a former employee. Charles Reynolds, vice president of operations, issued a statement expressing disappointment and assuring shareholders that operations will continue unaffected under interim leadership. Emma stared at the screen, then at her mother. Are they talking about Ethan? Is he in trouble too? Sophia turned off the TV, her mind racing. No, sweetheart. They're just trying to scare me. She scrolled through her contacts, considering options. Most of her friends were business associates, people who would now keep their distance to avoid career contamination. Hotels were an option, but with her accounts frozen, she'd need to rely on personal savings that would dwindle quickly. Her phone rang. Ethan. I just saw the news, he said without preamble. You okay? They've locked me out of everything, frozen my accounts, my building access. We have 48 hours to vacate the apartment. Do you have somewhere to go? Sophia hesitated. I'm working on it. A pause on the line. I have a pull-out couch. It's not fancy, but it's clean, and Leah would be thrilled to have Emma around. I couldn't impose. It's not imposing if it's offered freely. His voice softened slightly. You helped me see the truth. Let me help you stay safe while you fight for it. The next morning, Sophia and Emma arrived at Ethan's modest two-bedroom apartment with 2 suitcases and a box of essential belongings. The contrast with their luxury penthouse couldn't have been more stark worn, but clean furniture, family photos on the walls, books stacked on shelves made from cinder blocks and boards. It was small but unmistakably a home in ways her designer apartment never had been. Leah greeted them enthusiastically, immediately pulling Emma to see her room and toys. Sophia stood awkwardly in the living room, feeling entirely out of place. Coffee, Ethan offered, gesturing toward a small kitchen where a pot was brewing. Please, Sophia set down her bag. Thank you for this. I know it's strange. Strange doesn't begin to cover it. Ethan handed her a mug with a chipped handle. But then having the CEO of Grant Tech sleeping on my pull-out couch wasn't exactly on my 5-year plan. Former CEO, apparently. The news is reporting that Reynolds has been named interim chief executive. They drank their coffee in silence for a moment, the sounds of the girls playing drifting from Leah's room. I spent my whole life building that company, Sophia said finally, and it all disappeared in a day. Not everything. Ethan nodded toward the bedroom where Emma's laughter could be heard. You still have what matters most, and your integrity. That night, after the girls were asleep, Emma and Leah had insisted on a sleepover in Leah's room. Sophia sat on the pull-out couch that would be her bed, staring at her phone. The news had gotten worse. Not only had she been suspended, but Reynolds was now publicly suggesting that she had been working with Ethan to manipulate safety records as part of a planned lawsuit against the company. Her phone buzzed with texts from former colleagues, some expressing concern, others clearly distancing themselves from the fallout. Then came an email from Janet Winters. Be careful, Sophia. This goes deeper than you know. Watch your back. Ethan emerged from his bedroom dressed in sweatpants and a faded navy t-shirt. Can't sleep. Sophia shook her head. Janet Winters just warned me to watch my back. Smart woman. He sat in the armchair across from her. Reynolds isn't going to stop at character assassination. I never thought he'd go this far. I trusted him. Ethan studied her face. You've had a lot of illusions shattered this week. I've spent years thinking I was building something important. Now I'm not sure what I was building at all. Sophia looked around the modest apartment. Meanwhile, you lost your job, your income, your status, and somehow built something real. Don't romanticize struggle, Sophia. It's been hard. Really hard. After Karen died, I was lost for a long time. Taking care of Leah, trying to find work with a termination on my record. Some days I barely held it together. How did you, one day at a time, focus on what matters? Leah, teaching her, protecting her. The rest is just noise. His eyes met hers. You'll find your way through this too. The next morning, while Ethan was at work and the girls at school, Sophia used the quiet apartment to plan her next steps. She needed evidence that couldn't be buried or explained away. She needed to speak with the technician. Ethan had saved Marcus Rivera, now working for a competitor in Austin, according to social media. She drafted an email explaining the situation and asking for his account of what happened. His response came within an hour. I can't help you. I signed an NDA as part of my settlement. My family depends on that money. Sophia stared at the screen, another piece clicking into place. Reynolds had bought Rivera's silence. The question was, how many others had been similarly silenced? Her research was interrupted by a knock at the apartment door. Through the peephole, she saw two men in suits, not the ones from the parking garage, but with the same professional demeanor. Corporate security or private investigators, she guessed. She remained silent, not opening the door. Ms. Grant, we know you are in there, one called through the door. We just want to talk about your situation. Sophia didn't respond, her heart racing. After several minutes, they left. She immediately texted Ethan. People looking for me came to your apartment. Corporate types. They're gone now, but they know I'm here. His response was immediate. Don't open the door for anyone. I'm coming home. 20 minutes later, Ethan arrived, checking the hallway and stairwell before entering. They know where you are. That's not good. How would they track me here? Your phone, your car, Bradley, knowing we were in contact. Doesn't matter now. We need to move you. Where? They'd find me at a hotel just as easily. Ethan paced the small living room, thinking, we need to get into Reynolds' office, find concrete evidence of what he's been hiding, breaking into the Grant Tech executive offices. Are you serious? Do you have a better idea? Reynolds is systematically destroying your reputation and cutting off your resources. If we don't get ahead of this, you could face criminal charges. Or worse. The determined look in his eyes reminded Sophia of the maintenance worker who had appeared in the parking garage, focused, unafraid, prepared to act while others stood frozen. She realized that beneath the quiet exterior, Ethan Ward was a warrior who had simply chosen a different battlefield. How would we even get in? My access has been revoked. I still have contacts in the security department. People who know what Reynolds is really like. Ethan pulled out his phone. Let me make a call. That evening, after arranging for a neighbor to watch the girls, Sophia found herself in the passenger seat of Ethan's battered pickup truck, parked a block from the Grant Tech headquarters. The night security shift had just changed, and according to Ethan's contact, they had 20 minutes, while cameras in the executive corridor were under maintenance. This is insane, she whispered as they approached the service entrance. Breaking into my own company. Technically, we're not breaking in. Ethan held up a key card. We're entering with authorization, just not yours. The service entrance accepted the key card without issue. They moved quickly through back corridors, avoiding the main lobby with its security desk. The executive floor was dark and silent as they made their way to Reynolds' office. The door was locked, but Ethan produced a small tool from his pocket. Where did you learn that you pick up skills in special operations? Not all doors in war zones come with key cards. The lock clicked open. We have 15 minutes max. Reynolds' office was immaculate with awards and photographs of him with various dignitaries adorning the walls. Sophia went straight to his computer while Ethan began carefully searching through file cabinets. It's password protected, Sophia said, frustrated. Try Everest 74, Ethan suggested, not looking up from the files. Sophia typed it in. The desktop appeared. How did you know that? He climbs Everest on his vacation every July. Brags about it constantly, and people who brag rarely think about security. Ethan continued methodically examining files. Sophia began searching through Reynolds' emails and documents. There was nothing overtly incriminating. Reynolds was too smart for that, but there were patterns. References to special handling for safety incidents, discussions about containment strategies for worker complaints. Then she found a folder labeled Insurance Policies. Inside were files on dozens of employees, including Marcus Rivera and Ethan himself. Each contained detailed personal information, financial records, family details, potential leverage points. And in Rivera's file, a copy of the NDA with a side letter specifying that his settlement was contingent on his testimony against Ethan. Ethan, look at this. She turned the screen so he could see. He's been collecting blackmail material on employees, using it to keep people quiet. Ethan's expression darkened as he scanned the files. There's a file on you, too. Sophia clicked on it, discovering surveillance photos of her and Emma, records of her finances, even transcripts of private conversations with board members. Reynolds had been building a case against her for months, waiting for the right moment. He's been planning this, all of it, Ethan nodded grimly. And there's more. He held up a file he'd found in the cabinet. Falsified safety inspections for 5 different facilities, all signed off by Reynolds personally. They photographed everything with their phones, working quickly but methodically. Just as they were finishing, Ethan froze, holding up a hand for silence. Footsteps in the hallway. Security patrol, he mouthed, switching off the computer monitor. Hide. They ducked behind Reynolds' large desk as a flashlight beam swept under the door. The footsteps paused outside, then continued down the hall. Sophia realized she'd been holding her breath only when Ethan touched her arm gently. We need to go. Now. They retraced their steps to the service entrance, hearts pounding with every corner turned. Once back in Ethan's truck, Sophia let out a shaky laugh. I can't believe we just did that. I've never broken a rule in my life, and now I'm breaking into offices stealing files. Welcome to the other side of the rules, Sophia. Sometimes it's the only place truth lives. As they drove back to the apartment, Sophia scrolled through the photos they'd taken, building a mental case against Reynolds. He'd systematically created a culture of fear and silence, using both corporate power and personal blackmail to maintain control. The safety violations were just one part of a larger pattern of corruption. What now, she asked as they pulled into the apartment complex parking lot. Now we take this to someone who can use it, someone Reynolds doesn't control. The board is compromised. You saw the files. He has dirt on half of them. Then who? Ethan parked the truck, turning to face her fully. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Federal investigators who can't be bought off or threatened. And the press. Once this is public, Reynolds loses his advantage. The next day dawned with new purpose. While the girls were at school, Sophia and Ethan organized the evidence they'd gathered, creating a clear timeline of safety violations, cover-ups, and intimidation tactics. Sophia drafted a comprehensive statement detailing her own complicity through inaction and her commitment to making things right. Ethan watched her work, noting the transformation. The corporate executive who had once prioritized protocols over people was gone. In her place was a woman determined to protect those she had previously overlooked. Their work was interrupted by Ethan's phone ringing. The caller ID showed Leah's school. "Mr. Ward, this is Principal Davis. There was an incident at pickup. A man tried to collect Leah, claiming to be her uncle. When questioned, he left quickly. Emma Grant is also missing from aftercare. We've called the police." Ethan's face went ashen. "What do you mean missing?" "She was signed out by a woman claiming to be Ms. Grant's assistant. The woman had proper ID and knew the security password." Sophia, who had been watching Ethan's expression change, was already on her feet. "What's happened?" "Someone took the girls." Ethan's voice was deadly calm, but his eyes burned with focused rage. "We need to go. Now." They raced to the school where police were already taking statements. Sophia provided a description of her actual assistant, confirming that no one had been authorized to pick up Emma. Ethan paced like a caged animal, his military training evident in his controlled movements and hyper-awareness. As they were speaking with detectives, Sophia's phone rang, an unknown number. "Ms. Grant." A familiar voice. "Reynolds. You seem to have misplaced something valuable." "As have I." "Where are they?" Sophia's voice shook with rage and fear. "Safe for now, but that could change if certain files don't return to where they belong. All copies, all evidence." Ethan, watching Sophia's face, could tell immediately who was calling. He gestured for her to put it on speaker. "If you've touched our daughters," Ethan began, his voice terrifyingly quiet. "Mr. Ward." Reynolds sounded unsurprised to find him there. "Always the hero, but this time heroics won't help. This is business. Taking children is not business," Sophia snapped. "It's a federal crime." Reynolds' voice hardened. "So is corporate espionage, industrial sabotage, breaking and entering. Shall I continue the warehouse on Canton Street? 1 hour. Come alone, bring everything you took, and the children go home unharmed." The call ended. Sophia looked at Ethan, terror and determination warring in her expression. "We have to go." "It's a trap," Ethan said flatly. "He doesn't intend to let any of us walk away from this." The detective, who had been listening, frowned. "We can send officers?" "No," Ethan cut him off. "If Reynolds sees police, we don't know what he'll do." He turned to Sophia. "I need to make a call. Someone I trust." While the police continued their investigation, Ethan stepped away, speaking quietly into his phone. When he returned, his expression had changed, focused, almost predatory. "I have a plan, but you need to trust me completely." "Whatever it takes," Sophia said without hesitation. "Just get our girls back." The warehouse on Canton Street was in an industrial area largely deserted after business hours. Sophia parked her car where instructed, then walked alone toward the building's side entrance. In her hand was a USB drive containing all the evidence they had gathered. Around her neck hung a small pendant, new given to her by Ethan before they separated. Inside the warehouse was dimly lit with shipping containers, creating a maze of corridors. Reynolds stood in a cleared area at the center, flanked by 2 men, the same ones who had come to Ethan's apartment. Of the girls, there was no sign. "Where are they?" Sophia demanded, stopping several yards away. Reynolds smiled thinly. "Safe. Show me what you brought." Sophia held up the USB drive. "Everything we took from your office." "Now where are my daughter and Leah?" Reynolds gestured to one of his men, who disappeared behind a shipping container, returning moments later with the girls. Emma and Leah looked frightened but unharmed, holding hands tightly. Leah's expression brightened slightly when she saw Sophia, but Emma began crying. "Mommy, it's okay, sweetie," Sophia called, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Everything's going to be fine." Reynolds extended his hand. "The drive." Sophia hesitated. "How do I know you won't hurt us once I hand this over?" "You don't, but you have no choice." Reynolds' smile was cold. "Your maternal instinct overrides your business sense. It always was your weakness." Slowly, Sophia walked forward, the USB drive extended. As Reynolds reached for it, she asked quietly, "Why Charles?" "We built the company together." "Why risk everything like this? Because you started believing your own press." "Sophia, thinking you built Grant Tech when I was the one who made all the hard decisions, who kept the machine running while you played CEO." His voice hardened. I earned this company. You were just the acceptable face we put on it. As his fingers closed around the drive, the pendant at Sophia's throat suddenly emitted a high-pitched beep. Reynolds froze confused. What is... The warehouse doors burst open. Men in tactical gear swarmed in from multiple entrances, weapons raised. Down. Down, everyone. Down, chaos erupted. Reynolds' men reached for weapons but were quickly subdued. Reynolds himself lunged for Sophia, grabbing her arm roughly, but suddenly staggered backward, an expression of shock on his face. Behind him stood Ethan, eyes cold fists still extended from the precise strike he delivered to a pressure point in Reynolds' shoulder. Reynolds collapsed to his knees, arm hanging uselessly. The girl Sophia shouted, searching frantically through the confusion. Here, Ethan's voice from behind a container. He emerged with both girls clinging to him, his body positioned to shield them from potential threats. As federal agents secured the scene and paramedics checked the children, Sophia learned what Ethan had done. The someone he trusted was his former SEAL teammate, now an FBI agent specializing in corporate crime. The pendant had contained a tracking device and microphone broadcasting Reynolds' confession to agents surrounding the warehouse. Hours later, after statements had been given and the girls were finally asleep in Ethan's apartment, curled together on Leah's bed like sisters, Sophia sat on the couch beside Ethan, emotionally exhausted. How did you know to call the FBI? That they'd believe you? Ethan shrugged slightly. I didn't know for sure, but Jake, my teammate, he's been investigating corporate safety violations for years. When I told him what we found, he already had a file on Reynolds. We just gave him the final pieces. You risked everything. Sophia's voice was quiet in the dimly lit room. Your freedom, your daughter, so did you. His eyes met hers. When it counted, you chose people over power. That's all that matters in the end. In the silence that followed, something shifted between them. Understanding, respect, perhaps something more. Two people from different worlds who had found common ground in the most unlikely circumstances. The next morning, while the girls ate breakfast, the news broke. Grant Tech executive arrested in kidnapping corruption scandal. Reynolds' face filled the screen, being led away in handcuffs. The reporter detailed allegations of safety violations, witness intimidation, and most recently the kidnapping of 2 children in an attempt to silence whistleblowers. Emma looked up from her cereal. Is the bad man going to jail? Sophia nodded. Yes, sweetheart. He can't hurt anyone anymore. Leah considered this seriously. Dad says sometimes people forget what's important until something bad happens to remind them. Ethan ruffled his daughter's hair affectionately. Pretty wise for 8 years old, huh? Sophia watched them, this man who had lost everything yet somehow maintained his integrity, his daughter who carried first aid supplies and wisdom beyond her years. She thought of her own life, the success that had come at the cost of so much else. The company she might never return to the reputation that might never recover. As if reading her thoughts, Ethan said quietly, What will you do now? Before she could answer, Emma spoke up. Can we make that safety school now? Like in my picture, Sophia and Ethan exchanged surprised glances. What safety school, sweetie? Sophia asked. Emma rolled her eyes in the way only children can. The one where Ethan teaches people how not to get hurt at work. And you can teach the bosses how to be good bosses. Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan murmured, echoing their earlier conversation. Sophia felt something stir within her: possibility, purpose, redemption. A chance to rebuild not just her life, but something meaningful. Something that put people first. I think that's a wonderful idea, she said, her gaze meeting Ethan's. If Mr. Ward is interested in a new partnership. Ethan's expression was unreadable for a moment. Then a small smile tugged at his lips. I might be. Depends on the terms. As the girls cleared their breakfast dishes, chattering about what the safety school might look like, Sophia felt a weight lifting. She had lost her company, her reputation, her financial security, yet somehow sitting in this modest apartment with these 3 people, she felt richer than she ever had in her penthouse suite. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and obstacles she'd never anticipated. But for the first time in years, Sophia Grant was looking forward, not with anxiety about quarterly reports or board meetings, but with hope. Hope born from crisis connection, forged through danger and possibility, emerging from loss. Emma and Leah returned to the table with paper and colored pencils, already designing logos for their imaginary school. Watching them work together, Sophia realized that sometimes the most important lessons come not from success, but from failure, and that sometimes being broken open is the only way to let the light in. 2 weeks after Reynolds' arrest, the media frenzy showed no signs of abating. Headlines splashed across business journals and news sites. Grant Tech scandal widens, CEO turned whistleblower. Corporate safety violations exposed. Grant Tech's stock price had plummeted 30%, and class action lawsuits from injured workers were piling up. The board had installed an interim CEO, distancing themselves from both Reynolds and Sophia despite their earlier complicity in the culture that enabled the violations. Sophia sat at Ethan's kitchen table scrolling through news stories on her laptop while the girls played in the living room. The apartment had become a strange sort of sanctuary, a place where her former identity as powerful CEO had been stripped away, leaving her to rediscover who she was beneath the corporate armor. Janet Winters had called that morning, the first board member to reach out personally since the scandal broke. The board's considering offering you your position back. Public sentiment is turning in your favor. They think you'd help stabilize the company. Sophia had been surprised by her own lack of interest. I need time to consider whether that's the right path forward, Janet. For the company or for me. Now watching Emma and Leah construct an elaborate fort from couch cushions and blankets, Sophia wondered what returning to Grant Tech would mean. Could she truly reform a system that had been corrupt for years? Or would she be better starting something new? Something built on the painful lessons she'd learned. Ethan entered from his bedroom, dressed for his shift at the garage. The bruise on his dress from the warehouse confrontation had faded to a yellowish smudge. He paused, noticing her thoughtful expression. Company wants you back. She nodded, closing the laptop. Janet called. They're floating the idea. Are you considering it? I don't know. She looked toward the girls, lowering her voice. Going back would mean resources, influence, the ability to implement real safety changes across multiple facilities. But Ethan filled a travel mug with coffee, his movements efficient as always. But it would also mean working within a system that enabled everything that happened, with people who looked the other way. Ethan regarded her thoughtfully. Sometimes the hardest places to create change are the ones that need it most. His words lingered as he left for work, the door closing quietly behind him. Sophia turned back to her laptop, opening a new document. Emma's innocent suggestion of a safety school had taken root in her mind, growing into something more concrete with each passing day. She began typing, outlining a business plan for what she had started calling the Phoenix Response Center, a training facility focused on workplace safety, emergency response, and creating corporate accountability. The name had come to her while watching Ethan teach the girls basic first aid. Like the mythical phoenix, she wanted to build something new from the ashes of her former career, something that would prevent others from suffering as Grant Tech's workers had. When the doorbell rang an hour later, Sophia was deep in financial projections. She glanced through the peephole to see a professionally dressed woman she didn't recognize. Cautious after recent events, she opened the door, only partially keeping the security chain engaged. Are you Sophia Grant? The woman held up credentials. I'm Special Agent Melissa Carter with the Department of Labor. We're investigating the safety violations at Grant Tech, and I was hoping to ask you some questions. Sophia verified the credentials, then invited Agent Carter inside. For the next hour, she detailed everything she had discovered, the falsified inspection reports, the intimidation of employees who reported violations, Reynolds' elaborate system of cover-ups, and blackmail. Agent Carter took meticulous notes. This is consistent with what we're hearing from other witnesses. But most are still afraid to go on record. Your testimony will be crucial if we want these cases to stick. When the agent left, promising to be in touch for formal depositions, Sophia felt a strange mixture of vindication and dread. The truth was coming to light, but the process would be lengthy and painful, with no guarantee of justice for those harmed. That evening, Ethan returned from work with a surprise visitor, Marcus Rivera, the technician he had saved from the explosion 2 years ago. The young man stood awkwardly in the doorway, hat in hands. I saw the news, he said, eyes darting between Sophia and Ethan. About Reynolds, about what really happened. I should have spoken up sooner. Ethan shook his head. You had your family to think about. Rivera's shoulders slumped. They paid me to lie about what happened. Made me say I violated protocol when really they had disabled the safety systems for that maintenance shortcut. Then they made me testify against you, Mr. Ward. Said they'd take back the settlement if I didn't. Sophia felt a surge of anger, not at Rivera, but at the system that had forced this impossible choice on him. No one should have to choose between telling the truth and feeding their children. I want to make it right, Rivera continued. I'm ready to testify about what really happened, about how Mr. Ward saved my life when everyone else was worried about the equipment. His testimony would be invaluable for the investigations, but Sophia recognized the risk he was taking. You might lose your settlement. Are you prepared for that? Rivera nodded resolution, hardening his features. My kids deserve a father who stands up for what's right. I can find another job, can't find another conscience. After Rivera left with promises to meet with Agent Carter, Sophia and Ethan sat on the balcony of the apartment watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The girls had gone to bed exhaustion from their play, finally overcoming their usual resistance to bedtime. More people will come forward now, Ethan said, sipping a beer. Rivera's testimony changes things. It might not be enough to get your job back, Sophia cautioned. The legal battles could drag on for years. Ethan's smile held no bitterness. I'm not looking to go back, Sophia. Some bridges stay burned, and maybe that's for the best. His words resonated with her own growing certainty that returning to Grant Tech wasn't the right path. The company had been built on a foundation that was fundamentally flawed. Better to build something new than try to salvage what was broken beyond repair. I've been thinking about Emma's idea, she admitted, about starting a training center, teaching workplace safety, emergency response, creating accountability frameworks for companies. Ethan's interest visibly peaked. Using your executive experience and my field knowledge? Exactly. She felt a flutter of excitement, the first genuine enthusiasm she'd experienced in weeks. We could offer training programs for workers and management, help companies develop real safety cultures, not just checkbox compliance. It would take startup capital facilities accreditation. Ethan's tone wasn't dismissive, but practical thinking through the challenges as he did with any mission. I have some personal savings that Reynolds couldn't touch. And once the legal situation settles, I should regain access to my investments. Not CEO-level wealth, but enough to start something meaningful. Their conversation stretched into the night, possibilities unfurling between them. By the time they finally went to sleep, Sophia on the pull-out couch that had become her bed, Ethan to his room down the hall, the Phoenix Response Center had evolved from vague concept to nascent reality. The next morning brought a harsh return to their ongoing challenges. Sophia's phone rang early, her attorney, with troubling news. Reynolds had been granted bail, despite the kidnapping charges, his wealth and connections overriding the prosecutor's concerns about flight risk. Is that even possible? Sophia paced the kitchen, keeping her voice low to avoid waking the girls. He took children hostage. His attorney argued successfully that it was a custodial dispute, not a kidnapping. The lawyer's tone conveyed his frustration. They're painting it as a misunderstanding between corporate colleagues, not the criminal act it was. After the call ended, Sophia found Ethan in the living room, his expression making it clear he had overheard enough to understand. Reynolds won't stop coming after us just because he's facing charges. If anything, he's more dangerous now. We should move the girls somewhere safer, Sophia suggested. My sister has a place in Colorado. Ethan shook his head firmly. Running shows fear, and fear gives him power. We stay, but we're smart about it. His military background surfaced in the calm assessment of threat and response. New security protocols. The girls don't go anywhere alone. We vary our routines, watch for surveillance. Their conversation was interrupted by Leah's sleepy voice from the hallway. Dad, why are you talking about bad guys so early? Ethan's demeanor shifted instantly, the strategic planner replaced by the gentle father. Just some grown-up problems, kiddo. Nothing for you to worry about. How about pancakes? While Ethan made breakfast with the girls, Sophia received another call, this one from Janet Winters, speaking not as a board member, but as a friend. Reynolds has allies on the board still, Janet warned. Be careful what information you share with anyone connected to Grant Tech, including me. The warning heightened Sophia's unease. Reynolds' reach extended further than they'd realized, his influence embedded in the corporate structure, like roots of an invasive plant. Cutting him out wouldn't be as simple as removing one corrupt executive. That afternoon, Sophia drafted a formal statement declining the offer to return as CEO of Grant Tech. Her attorney advised against making it public until the investigations progressed further, but the decision itself brought unexpected relief. She was choosing a different path forward, one aligned with her evolving values rather than her former ambitions. While the girls were at school the next day, Sophia and Ethan visited potential locations for the Phoenix Response Center. Most were well outside their price range, but a small building in a working-class neighborhood caught their attention, formerly a community center, now vacant and in need of renovation. The owner, an older man named Frank Martinez, recognized Ethan immediately. "You fixed my daughter's car last month. Wouldn't take full payment when you found out she was a single mom." Ethan shrugged, uncomfortable with the recognition. Just did what made sense. Frank studied them both clearly, connecting Ethan with the Sophia Grant he'd been seeing on the news. "You two starting some kind of business?" Sophia explained their vision for the center, training in workplace safety, emergency response, creating accountability in corporate environments. A place where both workers and management could learn to prioritize human lives over profit margins. Frank nodded slowly, then named a rent figure significantly below market value. "Place needs work, but the bones are good, and what you're doing, it matters. My brother lost his arm in a factory accident 20 years ago. Company called it operator error, but everyone knew they'd been cutting corners on machine maintenance. They signed a 6-month lease that afternoon with options for renewal and eventual purchase." As they walked through the empty space, Sophia could already envision what it would become. Training rooms, simulation areas, offices for consultations with businesses seeking to improve their safety cultures. "We'll need equipment instructors," Ethan said, his mind working through practical considerations. "Certification courses, insurance, marketing to get the first clients in the door." Sophia nodded, making notes on her phone. "And we'll need to develop relationships with regulatory agencies, legal experts in workplace safety, medical professionals who can teach advanced first aid." The project energized them both, providing focus amid the ongoing stress of investigations and legal proceedings. Each brought different strengths to the partnership. Sophia's business acumen and corporate connections balanced by Ethan's practical experience and integrity. Together, they created something neither could have built alone. The girls proved equally enthusiastic, spending hours after school, drawing logos and making signs for the center. Emma's artistic talent emerged in colorful depictions of people helping each other, while Leah contributed practical ideas about what kids should learn about first aid. "We could have classes for children too," Leah suggested one evening as they all worked on plans at the kitchen table, "so they know what to do in emergencies." Her suggestion prompted a new dimension to their business model: community classes offered at reduced rates or free, ensuring that potentially life-saving knowledge wasn't restricted to those who could afford it. As renovation on the building began, funded by Sophia's remaining savings, the first real obstacle emerged. Their application for business permits was mysteriously delayed, caught in bureaucratic limbo, despite meeting all requirements. When Ethan visited the permitting office to inquire, the clerk was apologetic but evasive. "Looks like there's been a flag placed on this application," the clerk murmured, glancing around nervously. "Can't tell you more than that." Ethan reported this to Sophia that evening, both recognizing Reynolds' influence at work. "He still has people in his pocket, even from jail. Connections in local government, former colleagues willing to create obstacles." Sophia's frustration mounted. "We've done everything by the book. What more do they want?" "They want us to give up," Ethan said simply. "To decide it's not worth the fight." The setback only strengthened their resolve. While Sophia worked legal channels to address the permit issues, Ethan accelerated renovations on the parts of the building that didn't require additional permissions. They adapted, finding alternate routes forward when direct paths were blocked. Their resilience attracted attention. A local news station ran a feature on the Phoenix Response Center, framing it as a story of redemption and corporate accountability. The publicity brought unexpected allies, former Grant Tech employees offering to volunteer, safety experts willing to serve as instructors, community members showing up with tools and supplies for the renovation. Reynolds, watching from the sidelines while awaiting trial, intensified his counter-efforts. Anonymous negative reviews appeared online for a business that hadn't even opened. Suppliers suddenly canceled orders, citing scheduling conflicts. The contractor handling major electrical work quit without explanation, leaving crucial systems incomplete. Each morning brought new challenges, new evidence of their opponent's determination to see them fail. Yet each evening found them still, standing still, moving forward inch by hard-won inch. One night, after a particularly difficult day of setbacks, Sophia found Ethan sitting alone on the building's roof, staring at the city lights. The renovation below was progressing, despite the obstacles: walls, framed training rooms taking shape, the bones of their vision becoming tangible reality. Sometimes I wonder if we're crazy, she admitted, sitting beside him on the makeshift bench, taking on something this big with so many forces aligned against us. Ethan's gaze remained on the distant skyline. Maybe we are, but I'd rather be crazy than complicit. His simple statement crystallized what had been forming in Sophia's mind for weeks. The true measure of a life wasn't success as defined by corporate standards, profit margins, market share, stock prices. It was the courage to stand for something meaningful, even when that stand came at personal cost. I spent 20 years climbing to the top, she reflected, only to discover I was on the wrong mountain all along. Ethan turned to her, then really seeing her perhaps for the first time, not as the CEO who had fired him, not as the whistleblower who had exposed corruption, but as a woman finding her own truth amid the wreckage of her former certainties. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibility. Then Leah's voice called from the stairwell, breaking the tension. Dad, Emma, and I finished the sign. The girls emerged onto the roof, carefully carrying a hand-painted banner between them. In colorful letters surrounded by drawings of people helping each other, they had written, Phoenix Response Center, anyone can save someone. Ethan embraced his daughter, pride evident in his expression. That's perfect, kiddo. Sophia felt her throat tighten as Emma looked to her for approval. It's more than perfect, she managed. It's exactly what we're trying to build. That night, as they drove home, the car fell silent when they turned onto Ethan's street. 3 police cruisers sat outside his apartment building, lights flashing in the darkness. Uniformed officers stood talking with neighbors, flashlights sweeping across the parking lot. Ethan parked a block away, instinct telling him to assess before approaching. Stay in the car with the girls. I'll find out what's happening. Sophia watched him approach an officer, noted the change in his body language as he received whatever news was being delivered. When he returned to the car, his expression was grim. Someone broke into the apartment, took everything apart, slashed furniture, spray-painted threats on the walls. Emma began to cry softly in the back seat. Leah put an arm around her friend's shoulders, her own face pale but composed. Is it the bad man again, Dad? Ethan met his daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror, not sugarcoating but keeping his explanation age-appropriate. Probably someone working for him, yes. But the police are here and we're all safe. That's what matters most. They checked into a hotel for the night, the girls finally falling asleep in one of the double beds, while Sophia and Ethan sat at the small table by the window speaking in hushed tones. We need to step up security at the center, Ethan said, his tactical mind assessing vulnerabilities. Security cameras, better locks, maybe a monitoring service. Sophia nodded, but her thoughts had moved beyond defensive measures. This is escalation. Reynolds is getting desperate, which makes him more dangerous. We need to end this once and for all. How the trial is months away, and he's still got money and influence, even while out on bail. Sophia's expression hardened with newfound determination. We find what he's really afraid of us discovering. There's something more than what we already know, something he's still protecting. That's why he won't back off. The next day, while the girls remained with a trusted friend from Leah's school, the mother of a police officer adding an extra layer of security, Sophia and Ethan returned to the damaged apartment. The destruction was methodical, clearly meant to intimidate furniture. Slashed electronics, smashed walls covered with spray-painted warnings. Back off and last chance featured prominently among more explicit threats. As they sorted through the wreckage, salvaging what could be saved, Sophia noticed something odd about the damage pattern. Nothing was missing, not valuables, not documents. The intruders had destroyed but not taken. They weren't looking for anything, she realized. This was pure intimidation. Ethan nodded grimly, surveying his daughter's room where even stuffed animals had been torn apart. Which means Reynolds is afraid we already have whatever he's worried about, or that we'll find it somewhere else. That afternoon, while filing police reports and arranging for repairs, Sophia received an unexpected call from Bradley, her former assistant at Grant Tech. I need to talk to you, he said, voice tight with anxiety. Not over the phone. It's about Reynolds. They met at a coffee shop downtown, Bradley nervously checking over his shoulder every few minutes. I've been helping the federal investigation, he admitted, turning over documents, providing context for emails. Reynolds found out somehow. Sophia felt a chill. Has he threatened you? Bradley's laugh held no humor. Directly, no. But my sister's car brakes failed yesterday. Mechanics said the line had been cut. Then this morning, my apartment door had a red X painted on it. The pattern was clear. Anyone helping build the case against Reynolds was being targeted with escalating levels of intimidation. She had to end this before someone got seriously hurt. What do you know that has him so worried? Sophia pressed. There must be something specific he's trying to keep buried. Bradley hesitated, then slid a USB drive across the table. Engineering reports from the Texas plant. Not just about the explosion, but about design flaws in the medical devices manufactured there. Flaws that Reynolds knew about, but didn't disclose to regulators. He was cutting corners to meet production targets, and people died. As a result, Sophia stared at the small device, understanding its significance. This wasn't just about workplace safety violations anymore. This was knowing willful negligence that had led to fatalities among consumers, a criminal offense with much heavier penalties than what Reynolds currently faced. How many people, she asked, voice barely above a whisper. At least 17 deaths that I know of, Bradley replied. Maybe more that haven't been connected yet. Reynolds buried the reports, paid off the families with NDAs, recalled products quietly under different pretexts. Sophia pocketed the drive, her mind racing. This evidence would ensure Reynolds faced justice, but it also significantly raised the stakes. If he'd gone to such lengths to hide these deaths, there was no line he wouldn't cross to protect himself now. Be careful, Bradley warned as they parted. He's not just fighting for his reputation anymore. He's fighting to stay out of prison. When Sophia shared the new information with Ethan that evening, they both recognized the gravity of what they'd uncovered. This goes to the Department of Justice immediately, Ethan said, and we need to completely rethink our security precautions. They relocated temporarily to a small house outside the city belonging to Ethan's former SEAL teammate Jake. The rural property offered strategic advantages, limited access points, clear sight lines, distance from neighbors who might be manipulated or endangered. The girls adapted to the change with remarkable resilience, framing it as an adventure rather than a retreat. Jake's house had a large backyard where they could play safely, and the break from city routine provided welcome distraction from recent stresses. Sophia and Ethan took turns driving into the city to oversee continued renovations at the Phoenix Center, never establishing a predictable pattern that could be tracked. The USB drive and its damning contents had been turned over to federal prosecutors, adding new charges to Reynolds' case and eliminating the possibility of a lenient plea deal. Despite their precautions, an undercurrent of tension remained. Reynolds had gone silent, no new threats, no interference with the center's progress, no suspicious incidents. The absence of opposition felt more ominous than direct confrontation, suggesting he was planning something more significant than petty intimidation. We need to draw him out, Ethan said one evening as they reviewed security footage from the center. Force him to make a move on our terms, not his. Sophia considered the strategy, recognizing its roots in military tactics. What did you have in mind? I'd announce the center's opening. Make it a public event, media coverage, the whole works. Make it look like we're claiming victory. It would provide the perfect opportunity for Reynolds to strike, but also allow them to prepare to control the environment to be ready for whatever he attempted. A calculated risk, but potentially their best chance to end the stalemate. They spent the next week laying groundwork, informing trusted law enforcement contacts, installing additional security measures at the center, planning for every contingency they could imagine. The announcement went out. The Phoenix Response Center would officially open its doors the following Saturday, with demonstrations of workplace safety techniques, first aid training, and presentations on corporate accountability. Media response was immediate and enthusiastic, framing the center as a phoenix rising from the ashes of corporate corruption. Several prominent business leaders announced their attendance, eager to associate themselves with the positive narrative of reform and responsibility. Even Janet Winters confirmed she would be there, representing a faction of the Grant Tech Board interested in rebuilding the company's damaged reputation. The night before the opening, Sophia found herself unable to sleep. She sat on the porch of Jake's house, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill, stars brilliant above in the rural darkness. Tomorrow would either mark the beginning of a new chapter or bring a final confrontation with the man who had once been her mentor and was now her most dangerous adversary. Ethan joined her silently, offering a mug of tea before taking the chair beside her. You should be resting. Big day tomorrow. My mind won't stop racing, she admitted, planning for everything that could go wrong. That's normal before a mission, he assured her. The key is not letting it paralyze you. They sat quietly for a while, the silence comfortable between them. Over the past weeks, their relationship had evolved from reluctant allies to genuine partners, developing a rhythm and understanding that neither had anticipated. What happens after tomorrow? Sophia finally asked, giving voice to the uncertainty that had been growing alongside the center itself. Assuming everything goes as planned and Reynolds is finally contained. Ethan considered the question carefully. We build something that matters, something that helps people, something that reminds us why we started this in the first place. His answer was simple yet profound, focusing not on obstacles but on purpose. It reminded Sophia of what had drawn her to this path despite its difficulties, the chance to create something meaningful, something that put human welfare above profit margins and corporate hierarchies. In battle, Ethan continued, his voice soft in the darkness. Fear is a luxury you can't afford. When things get worse, instinct and training take over. Tomorrow, whatever happens, we'll be ready. His quiet confidence steadied her, as it had throughout their unlikely partnership. Whatever came next, Reynolds' final play, the center's future, their own evolving relationship, they would face it together with clear purpose and mutual trust. The morning of the opening dawned clear and crisp, sunlight streaming through the Phoenix Center's newly installed windows. Sophia and Ethan arrived early, overseeing final preparations, while security teams conducted thorough sweeps of the building and surrounding area. The girls remained at Jake's house, safely distanced from potential danger, though they had extracted promises to be brought to the center once the event concluded successfully. By 10 o'clock, the center hummed with activity. Local media set up cameras near the small stage where Sophia would deliver opening remarks. Community members began to arrive along with business representatives and safety professionals curious about the new initiative. Plainclothes officers mingled with the crowd, alert for any sign of Reynolds or his associates. At precisely 11, Sophia stepped up to the microphone, Ethan standing supportively nearby. She looked out at the gathered faces, some familiar, some new, all representing the community they hoped to serve. Welcome to the Phoenix Response Center, she began, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of tension. We founded this center on a simple belief that every person deserves to return home safely at the end of their workday, that no profit margin is worth a human life, that accountability isn't just a corporate buzzword, but a moral imperative. As she spoke, Ethan scanned the crowd continuously, hyper-aware of every movement, every unfamiliar face. The moment felt balanced on a knife's edge, triumph and threat equally possible in the minutes ahead. What neither of them had anticipated was the form Reynolds' revenge would take, or how quickly their carefully laid plans would be tested in fire and chaos. The explosion ripped through the center's main electrical panel just as Sophia finished her opening remarks. Sparks cascaded from the ceiling, followed by a deep concussive boom that shook the foundation. The crowd erupted in panic, bodies pushing toward exits as smoke began filling the main hall. Ethan's training kicked in instantly. Evacuation first. He grabbed the microphone from Sophia. Everyone moved calmly toward the exits. This is not a drill. Security personnel began directing the frightened attendees, while Ethan pulled Sophia away from the stage. His eyes scanned for the source of the detonation, already calculating that this was too precise to be accidental. The main doors are clear, Sophia shouted over the noise. What about the back offices? We checked them together. Stay close. Ethan moved with practiced efficiency, leading her through the thickening smoke. The sprinkler system had activated water raining down and turning the floor treacherous. They found two journalists huddled in the media room, disoriented by the blast, and guided them toward the exit. As they approached the training area at the back of the building, a secondary explosion tore through the wall, separating it from the storage room. Debris flew past them as Ethan shielded Sophia with his body. That wasn't random, he muttered, eyes narrowing through the smoke. That was timed. Understanding passed between them without words. This wasn't just sabotage, it was a coordinated attack designed to create maximum chaos and damage. Reynolds' final move against them. Outside, emergency vehicles converged on the scene, sirens wailing. Paramedics treated minor injuries while firefighters rushed into the building. Sophia counted heads frantically, making sure all attendees were accounted for. When she spotted Janet Winters being treated for a cut on her arm, she hurried over. Everyone got out, Janet confirmed, wincing as a paramedic cleaned her wound. But this wasn't an accident, was it? Before Sophia could respond, Jake appeared at her side, his FBI credentials visible on his belt. We've got reports of a man matching Reynolds' description seen leaving the area right before the explosion. He wouldn't have done this personally, but he'd want to watch. Ethan joined them, his face grim with soot, but eyes clear and focused. The second blast was remotely triggered. Someone waited until first responders were inside, which means they might still be watching, Jake concluded. I've got agents securing the perimeter now. Sophia's phone rang, a video call from an unknown number. Her stomach dropped as she answered, already certain who would be on the other end. Reynolds' face filled the screen, his expensive suit incongruous with the destruction visible behind Sophia. Quite the opening ceremony, Sophia, though perhaps not what you had planned. Something in his smug satisfaction pushed Sophia's fear into cold fury. Is this what you've become, Charles, a man who bombs buildings? His smile faltered slightly, merely a demonstration of what happens to those who overreach. The center can be rebuilt if you drop your testimony and recall those engineering reports. Sophia's grip tightened on the phone. 17 people died because of those defective devices. I won't help you escape responsibility for that. A pity. Reynolds' expression hardened, because the next demonstration won't target a building. His gaze shifted to something off-camera. Such lovely girls, Emma and Leah. So trusting when the nice lady showed up, claiming to be from their school, saying there was an emergency. The world seemed to tilt beneath Sophia's feet. Behind her, she heard Ethan's sharp intake of breath. Jake immediately began speaking into his radio, dispatching agents to check on the girls at the safe house. Reynolds continued savoring their reaction. Don't worry, they're unharmed, for now. But their continued well-being depends entirely on your cooperation. I'll be in touch with specific instructions. The call ended abruptly. Sophia turned to Ethan, seeing her own horror reflected in his eyes. How could he have found them? The safe house location was known only to a handful of people. Jake returned his expression, confirming their worst fears. The girls are gone. Mrs. Peterson, the neighbor watching them, was found unconscious, drugged, not seriously injured. No sign of forced entry, which meant someone they trusted had betrayed them. Someone with knowledge of their security precautions in the girls' location. We need to move now, Ethan said, his voice deadly calm, despite the storm clearly raging within him. Before he gets them out of the state, Jake nodded grimly. I've already put out an Amber Alert with descriptions of both girls. All law enforcement agencies in a 3-state radius are being notified. But we need to identify who gave up their location. Sophia's mind raced through possibilities. Who knew where the girls were staying? Jake, obviously, since it was his house. The neighbor, Mrs. Peterson. The school had been notified of their temporary absence. And Bradley, who had dropped off supplies yesterday after meeting Sophia at the center. Bradley, she realized with dawning horror. He'd been acting strange during that meeting, nervous, constantly checking his phone. She'd attributed it to general anxiety after the threats he'd received. But what if Reynolds had gotten to him? Forced him to cooperate by threatening his sister. She shared her suspicion with Jake, who immediately dispatched agents to locate Bradley. Ethan, meanwhile, had shifted fully into combat mode, his movements precise and his focus laser sharp. I need access to traffic cameras near the safe house, he told Jake. Timeframes, vehicle descriptions. And we need to check if Reynolds owns any properties within driving distance. While Jake coordinated with his team, Sophia received another call, this time from Reynolds' attorney. Ms. Grant, my client wishes to resolve this situation peacefully. He's prepared to exchange the children for all evidence related to the medical device reports. Sophia forced herself to remain calm, knowing she needed to buy time. How do I know the girls are safe? You'll receive proof of life shortly, but I must emphasize that my client's patience is limited. You have 3 hours to compile all copies of the reports and related documentation. She ended the call and immediately relayed the information to Ethan and Jake. 3 hours. That's our window to find them before Reynolds forces an exchange. Jake's phone chimed with an update. Agents had located Bradley, who broke down immediately under questioning. Reynolds had indeed threatened his sister's life, forcing Bradley to provide information about the safe house and security arrangements. He'd also confirmed that Reynolds was using a hunting cabin owned through a shell company located in the mountains about 90 minutes from the city. Ethan was already moving toward Jake's SUV. I know those mountains. If that's where he's holding them, there are only a few access roads. A tactical team is assembling, Jake cautioned, falling into step beside him. We should wait for backup. Ethan's expression brooked no argument. My daughter is with that monster. I'm not waiting. Sophia joined them at the vehicle, her business suit now streaked with soot and water from the sprinklers, her CEO polish stripped away by urgency and fear. I'm coming too. The drive to the mountains passed in tense silence, broken only by updates from Jake's team. Satellite imagery had confirmed activity at the cabin, including 2 vehicles and what appeared to be a private security detail, 3 armed men patrolling the perimeter. They're professionals, Jake warned, as they approached the area, pulling onto a forestry road that would bring them within hiking distance of the cabin without being detected. Former military or law enforcement. Reynolds isn't taking chances. Ethan checked the tactical vest Jake had provided from his trunk, adjusting the straps with practiced efficiency. Neither am I. Jake outlined the approach plan while they prepared. The tactical team would be 20 minutes behind them, but Ethan insisted they couldn't wait. They would conduct reconnaissance, establish the girl's location within the cabin, and prepare for extraction. No engagement unless absolutely necessary until backup arrived. As they hiked through the dense forest, keeping low and moving quietly, Sophia's mind filled with images of Emma and Leah, frightened, confused, wondering why no one had come for them yet. The thought fueled her determination, pushing her forward despite her inappropriate footwear and the rough terrain. They reached the observation point Jake had identified from satellite imagery, a ridge overlooking the cabin with sufficient tree cover to conceal their presence. Through binoculars, they could see the 3 guards stationed strategically around the property. The cabin itself was larger than Sophia had expected, with a wraparound porch and multiple rooms visible through windows. Movement behind one of those windows caught her attention. 2 small figures seated at what appeared to be a dining table, an adult female figure standing nearby. Sophia handed the binoculars to Ethan, her hand trembling slightly. Second window from the right, she whispered, "It's them." Ethan studied the scene, his expression revealing nothing but his white-knuckle grip on the binoculars, betraying his emotion. They look unharmed. Woman with them appears to be armed. Guards rotating positions every 15 minutes. Jake received confirmation that the tactical team was now 10 minutes out. "We hold position until they arrive," he insisted. "Going in against those odds risks the girls." Ethan's gaze remained fixed on the cabin. "We don't have the luxury of waiting. If Reynolds realizes law enforcement is closing in, he might move them. Or worse." Before Jake could respond, his radio crackled with an urgent update. Reynolds had been spotted en route to the cabin, estimated arrival in less than 5 minutes. The tactical team was being delayed by a downed tree across the access road, possibly placed deliberately. Decision point. Ethan murmured the military term hanging between them. With Reynolds arriving, the situation would change rapidly. Once he was inside, extracting the girls would become significantly more complicated. Sophia stared at the cabin, at the small figures of Emma and Leah visible through the window. Everything they had built, the center, their partnership, the fragile new life they were creating, hung in the balance of the next few minutes. "I have an idea," she said suddenly, the outline of a plan forming in her mind. "Reynolds doesn't know we found them. He's expecting me to agree to the exchange." Ethan caught on immediately. "You make contact, keep him talking, distracted. While you go in from the rear," Sophia confirmed. "The guards are focused outward. If they believe I'm still negotiating, they won't be expecting an extraction attempt." "It's risky," Jake cautioned, "but it might be our best option given the timeline." He checked his weapon. "I'll create a diversion to draw the perimeter guards when you give the signal." Sophia moved back toward the forestry road where she would have clear cell reception to call Reynolds. Ethan caught her arm before she left, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "Be careful," he said, simply the words carrying the weight of everything they weren't saying. Everything they hadn't had time to acknowledge amid the chaos of recent weeks. "You too. Get our girls back." Sophia squeezed his hand once, then moved quickly through the trees, her mind already composing the approach she would take with Reynolds. When she reached the designated spot, she called the number his attorney had provided. Reynolds answered on the second ring, his voice smug with anticipated victory. "Ready to make the exchange, Sophia." She forced confidence into her voice despite the fear clawing at her throat. "I have the files, Charles. All copies. But I need to speak with the girls first." Reynolds chuckled. "So predictable. Put yourself in my position, Sophia. Why would I give up my leverage before receiving what I want?" "Because you're a businessman," she countered, playing to his ego while watching the time. "You understand good faith gestures in negotiations." Let me speak to them, confirm they are unharmed, and I'll tell you where to find the files. There was a pause, then the sound of movement. Reynolds appeared to be traveling the background noise, suggesting he was in a vehicle. Very well, a brief conversation. Then we discussed terms. Sophia heard muffled instructions. Then Emma's frightened voice came through the phone. Mommy, where are you? I want to go home. Fighting back tears, Sophia kept her tone reassuring. I know, sweetheart. You'll be home soon, I promise. Is Leah with you? Are you both okay? Yes, Emma answered, her voice small. They said we're on a special trip, but I don't like it here. The lady won't let us go outside. Reynolds took back the phone, satisfied. Now about those files, Sophia launched into a detailed explanation of where he could find the evidence, a storage facility across town deliberately chosen to be as far from the cabin as possible. She invented complications about access codes and hidden compartments, stretching the conversation to give Ethan and Jake maximum time to position themselves. Through the trees, she could see Reynolds' black SUV approaching the cabin. She continued talking, describing false security measures protecting the files, watching as he parked and stepped out of the vehicle. Two of the perimeter guards approached him, providing a status update that she couldn't hear. Now Jake's voice sounded in the small radio he'd given her. Diversion in 30 seconds. Sophia needed to keep Reynolds outside, away from the girls. These files destroy you completely, Charles, she said, her voice harder now. Every decision that led to those deaths documented in your own words. The families of those 17 people deserve justice. She could see Reynolds' posture stiffen, even from a distance. Always so self-righteous, Sophia. You built that company on the same compromises you now condemn. The only difference is that I was honest about the costs of success. A sudden explosion rocked the far side of the property, Jake's diversion. The guards immediately responded, running toward the source of the disturbance. Reynolds turned toward the noise, momentarily distracted from their conversation. What was that? His voice sharpened with suspicion. What have you done? Sophia abandoned all pretense. I've done what you taught me, Charles. I protected what matters at any cost. She dropped the phone and began running toward the cabin, no longer concerned with stealth. Through her earpiece, Jake confirmed that Ethan had reached the rear entrance. The woman guarding the girls had moved to investigate the commotion, leaving them momentarily unattended. Reynolds realized the deception almost immediately. She watched him sprint toward the cabin, shouting orders to the one guard who had remained behind. Sophia pushed herself faster, her lungs burning and her business shoes entirely unsuited for the terrain. She had to reach Emma and Leah before Reynolds could use them as hostages against Ethan. She rounded the corner of the cabin just as gunshots echoed from inside. Her heart seemed to stop, terror freezing her in place for a crucial second before she forced herself forward up the porch steps through the front door. The scene inside unfolded in fragments of perception. The female guard on the floor, unconscious but breathing. Reynolds backed against the far wall, a gun in his hand. Ethan crouched protectively in front of Emma, and Leah, his body positioned to shield them completely. It's over, Charles, Sophia called out, drawing his attention away from Ethan and the girls. Law enforcement is surrounding the property. There's nowhere to go. Reynolds' face contorted with rage, the composed executive facade crumbling entirely. You've destroyed everything I built. Everything we built. No, Sophia took a careful step forward. You destroyed it when you decided profit was worth more than people's lives. For a moment, the outcome balanced on a knife's edge. Reynolds' finger tightened on the trigger, his gaze darting between Sophia and Ethan. Then the tactical team burst through both entrances, weapons trained on Reynolds, shouting commands. He hesitated only briefly before dropping his gun, the fight leaving him as he realized the futility of resistance. Ethan gathered both girls into his arms as officers secured Reynolds. Emma broke free immediately, running to Sophia with tears streaming down her face. Mommy, you came! Sophia knelt, embracing her daughter fiercely, relief washing through her in a wave so powerful it nearly brought her to her knees. Of course I came. I will always come for you no matter what. Over Emma's shoulder, her eyes met Ethan's as he held Leah close. The connection between them transcended words, gratitude, respect, and something deeper that had been growing steadily, despite all attempts to deny it. Jake supervised Reynolds' arrest personally, reading him his rights as agents led him to a waiting vehicle. Additional charges will be filed for kidnapping, attempted murder, and the bombing, he informed them. He won't see freedom again for decades, if ever. The drive back to the city passed in emotional exhaustion both girls eventually falling asleep in the back seat, their hands clasped together even in slumber. Sophia watched them in the rearview mirror, marveling at their resilience and the bond they had formed through shared experience. The Phoenix Center was cordoned off with police tape when they arrived, smoke damage visible even from outside. Firefighters had contained the blaze, but significant portions of the interior were destroyed. The dream they had built together stood damaged, but not defeated, much like themselves. "We'll rebuild," Ethan said quietly, standing beside her as they surveyed the damage. "Better and stronger." Sophia nodded, finding unexpected peace despite the destruction. The center was just a building. The idea behind it, the commitment to prioritizing safety and human dignity over profit, remained intact. The following weeks brought a whirlwind of activity. Reynolds' arrest made national headlines, especially once the full extent of his crimes became public. The medical device scandal triggered congressional hearings on corporate accountability and regulatory oversight. Former Grant Tech employees came forward with additional testimony, revealing a culture of corner-cutting and intimidation that had existed for years. Sophia found herself in demand as a consultant on corporate ethics reform, while Ethan's expertise in safety protocols attracted attention from companies suddenly motivated to address potential liabilities. The Phoenix Center's mission gained urgency and credibility from the very attack meant to destroy it. They temporarily relocated operations to a community college that offered classroom space, continuing scheduled training programs while rebuilding efforts began at the original site. The bombing, rather than discouraging enrollment, had dramatically increased interest. Each class filled to capacity with workers seeking to understand their rights and managers looking to create genuine safety cultures. One evening, as they reviewed architectural plans for the renovated center, Ethan looked up to find Sophia watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What he asked, suddenly self-conscious. "I'm trying to reconcile the man who appeared in that parking garage with the man sitting across from me now. Sometimes it seems like two different lives." Ethan considered this, setting down his pencil. Maybe it is two different lives. Or maybe it's just that we're finally living the right ones. The rebuilding process brought unexpected allies. Former Grant Tech employees volunteered weekends to help with construction. Local businesses donated materials and services. Even Janet Winters, now interim CEO of Grant Tech after a boardroom shakeup, offered corporate support, partly as public relations, but also as personal atonement for years of looking the other way. 3 months after the bombing, the Phoenix Response Center reopened with a ceremony much different from the first. No media circus this time, just a quiet gathering of those who had contributed to its resurrection. Sophia stood on the small stage, looking out at faces that had become family through shared purpose and adversity. "This center exists because of you," she told them, emotion making her voice uncharacteristically husky. "Not just your labor or donations, but your belief that we can create workplaces where every life is valued, where profit never takes precedence over people." As she spoke, her gaze found Ethan standing at the back of the room, Leah perched on his shoulders for a better view. Emma stood beside them, holding Leah's hand to steady her. The image caught in Sophia's throat, this unlikely family they had formed through crisis and courage. The center thrived in the months that followed. Corporate clients sought their training programs, recognizing that proactive safety cultures ultimately protected both workers and bottom lines. Community classes reached those most vulnerable to workplace exploitation. Government agencies began recommending their accountability frameworks as industry best practices. Through it all, Sophia and Ethan maintained their professional partnership during work hours, careful to keep personal feelings from complicating their shared mission. But outside the center, their relationship evolved with cautious, deliberate steps. Family dinners became regular occurrences. Weekend outings with the girls created memories untainted by crisis. Conversations stretched late into evening hours after the children were asleep. 6 months after the reopening, they received news that Reynolds had been convicted on all counts, including 17 counts of negligent homicide related to the defective medical devices. The sentence, 30 years without possibility of parole, offered closure to families of victims and to Sophia and Ethan themselves. The shadow that had hung over them since the warehouse confrontation finally lifted. That evening, they took the girls for ice cream to celebrate, though they framed it as simply a special treat rather than explanation of the legal proceedings still beyond childish understanding. Watching Emma and Leah compare flavors and giggle over brain freeze, Sophia felt a profound sense of gratitude for this unexpected second chance at life and purpose. Later, after the girls were asleep, she and Ethan sat on the balcony of his new apartment, a larger unit in the same complex with proper bedrooms for both girls and a study converted to an office for Phoenix Center work. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights spread below them. "Do you ever miss it?" Ethan asked suddenly. "The corporate life, the power and prestige." Sophia considered the question honestly. "Sometimes I miss the certainty, the clear metrics for success. This work we're doing now, measuring its impact, is more complicated." "But more meaningful," Ethan suggested. She nodded, sipping her tea. "More meaningful because it's more complicated. Because it deals with people, not just numbers on a spreadsheet." The comfortable silence between them spoke to how far they had come from their first antagonistic encounters. Trust had been built through crisis, respect, through observation of each other's strengths, and something deeper, through the shared commitment to both their work and their daughters. When Sophia finally broke the silence, her question surprised even herself. "Where do you see us in 5 years, Ethan?" He didn't pretend to misunderstand the question. "The center will be established nationally by then," he said thoughtfully. "Satellite locations in other states. Maybe federal legislation incorporating our accountability frameworks." "That's the work," Sophia pressed gently. "I'm asking about us." Ethan turned to face her, fully moonlight catching in his eyes. "Us is wherever we choose to be. Together, if that's what you want. The center, the girls, a life built on purpose rather than just ambition." His voice softened. "I've learned not to plan too far ahead, just to recognize what matters and hold on to it with both hands." The moment hung between them, heavy with possibility. Sophia found herself thinking of the corporate executive she had been driven isolated, measuring success in market share and stock prices. That woman would never have imagined finding fulfillment in a modest training center or family in the man she had once fired and the daughter who wasn't biologically hers. "I want that," she admitted finally. "All of it. The center, the girls, you. This life we've stumbled into somehow." Ethan's smile held no triumph, only quiet joy and perhaps relief. "I want that too. Have for a while now." Their first kiss was tentative, a crossing of boundaries, carefully maintained through months of partnership and friendship. But it carried the weight of everything they had survived together, every challenge overcome, every moment of courage and vulnerability shared. The Phoenix Center's one-year anniversary arrived with spring, marked by a community celebration that filled the renovated building with laughter and purpose. Former students returned to share how their training had prevented accidents or improved workplace conditions. Corporate clients testified to cultural transformations within their organizations. Government officials spoke of the center as a model for similar initiatives nationwide. Amid the festivities, Sophia found herself drawn to the small memorial garden created behind the building, a peaceful space dedicated to those who had lost their lives due to safety violations and corporate negligence. The 17 victims of the defective medical devices were commemorated there, along with others whose stories had emerged during the center's work. Ethan found her there, standing quietly among the flowering plants and small stone markers. "The girls are asking for you," he said softly. "They want to cut the cake." Sophia nodded but didn't immediately move. "Sometimes I wonder if we've done enough, if anything can really balance the scales against so much loss." Ethan's hand found hers warm and steady. "We can't bring them back, but we can make their deaths matter by changing what happens next." He gestured toward the building behind them, where dozens of people celebrated not just the center's survival, but its mission. "All of this exists because you refused to look away, because you chose to act when it would have been easier not to." His words settled something within her, not erasing the weight of responsibility, but making it bearable through shared purpose. Together they returned to the celebration, to Emma and Leah, waiting impatiently by an enormous cake decorated with the Phoenix Center logo. The moment captured everything they had built together, not perfection, but purpose. Not absence of challenge, but courage to face it. Not the life either had planned, but the one they had found through unlikely circumstances and deliberate choice. That evening, after the celebration wound down and the last guest departed, Ethan gathered everyone in the main training room. Sophia assumed he wanted to discuss cleanup or plans for the following day's regular classes. Instead, he knelt before her, producing a small box from his pocket. The ring inside wasn't elaborate or ostentatious, a simple band with a small stone that caught the light. But the meaning behind it filled the room more completely than any diamond could have. I'm not good with formal speeches, Ethan admitted, his usual composure finally faltering. But I know what matters now. You, the girls. This life we've built together. I want to make it official, if you do too. Emma and Leah watched with barely contained excitement, clearly co-conspirators in the plan. Sophia realized they had been unusually well-behaved during the cleanup, keeping her distracted while Ethan prepared. Is that a yes? Ethan asked when her silence stretched longer than he expected. Sophia laughed through sudden tears. Yes, of course, yes. The girls erupted in cheers, rushing forward to embrace them both. The four of them stood together in the center they had built from crisis and conviction, arms intertwined, the future stretching before them, with possibilities none could have imagined a year earlier. The wedding took place 3 months later in the Phoenix Center's courtyard, transformed for the occasion with flowers and lights. The guest list included those who had become family through shared purpose. Jake and his wife, Janet Winters, Frank Martinez, who had leased them the building neighbors who had supported them through difficult times, students whose lives had been changed through their training programs. Leah and Emma served as flower girls, solemn with the responsibility, until they reached the end of the aisle where they broke into identical grins of triumph. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful, focusing not on traditional vows but on commitments they had already demonstrated through action to stand together through challenge to protect what mattered, to build something meaningful, not just for themselves but for others. The reception that followed felt less like a formal celebration than a family gathering expanded to include an entire community. Tables spread across the courtyard hosted conversations between corporate executives and factory workers, government officials and community activists, all united by connection to the center's mission. As evening fell and lights twinkled overhead, Sophia found herself watching Ethan dance with both girls, one in each arm, their laughter floating across the courtyard. The sight filled her with a contentment she had never experienced in her previous life of corporate achievement and material success. Janet Winters approached, champagne glass in hand, following Sophia's gaze. You've built something remarkable here. Not just the center, but this family. Sophia smiled, accepting the compliment with a deflection, another change from her former self. Thank you. Though I think it built us as much as we built it. Janet nodded thoughtfully. Grant Tech is implementing your accountability frameworks across all facilities now. Reynolds' replacement is serious about reform. That's good to hear. Sophia meant it sincerely, having made peace with her former company and role. The work matters more than who gets credit for it. As Janet moved on to speak with other guests, Ethan approached the girls, having been claimed by Jake's wife for a cookie expedition. He extended his hand with formal playfulness. May I have this dance, Miss and Mrs. Ward? Sophia took his hand, smiling at the new name she had chosen to embrace, symbolizing not submission to tradition, but conscious choice of a shared identity. You may indeed, Mr. Ward. They moved together on the makeshift dance floor, comfortable in each other's space after months of growing closeness. Around them, their unlikely extended family continued celebrating not just their marriage, but the community and purpose they had created together. I keep thinking about what you said when we first started rebuilding the center, Sophia admitted as they danced, that maybe we were finally living the right lives. Ethan nodded, his hand warm against the small of her back. And I think you were right. This isn't the life I planned or expected. It's better, more challenging sometimes, but more real. The music shifted to a slower tempo and they adjusted their steps accordingly, the physical harmony reflecting the partnership they had built through crisis and commitment. Ethan glanced toward where Emma and Leah had returned, heads bent together in conspiratorial whispers over plates piled with desserts. They're plotting something, he observed with paternal resignation. They're always plotting something, Sophia laughed. That's what happens when you raise them to be problem solvers. As if on cue, the girls approached, matching expressions of determined innocence on their faces. Dad, we need to borrow Mom for a super important wedding thing, Leah announced. Super important, Emma echoed solemnly. Ethan released Sophia with exaggerated reluctance. I suppose I can spare her for a super important wedding thing, but I expect her back intact. The girls led Sophia toward the Phoenix Center building, unusually serious in their mission. Inside, they directed her to the memorial garden, now illuminated by soft landscape lighting. There they presented her with a new addition, a small orange paper crane hanging from one of the garden fixtures. We made it for good luck, Leah explained. Like the one I made before, remember? Sophia did remember the small orange crane Leah had given her during those first tentative days of their relationship, a token of childish hope that had somehow helped sustain her through the darkest moments. Emma pointed to writing on the crane's wing. We wrote something inside too. Carefully, Sophia unfolded the delicate paper creation. Inside, in Leah's careful handwriting, surrounded by Emma's decorative stars, were the words, "Heroes are just people who don't walk away." The simple truth caught in Sophia's throat, not because it was profound, but because it had come from these children who had seen both the worst and best of human nature, who had experienced fear and danger, but also courage and protection, who understood perhaps better than many adults what truly mattered. Ethan appeared in the garden entrance, watching the three of them with quiet contentment. Found the super important wedding thing, I see. The girls nodded solemnly, mission accomplished. When Sophia's eyes met his over their heads, the connection between them needed no words. Gratitude for this unlikely second chance commitment to the path they had chosen together. Certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them not alone, but as the family they had built from crisis and courage. Later that night, after the last guest had departed and the girls had finally succumbed to exhaustion, Sophia and Ethan stood together on the Phoenix Center's roof. Below them, the city lights stretched to the horizon, countless lives intersecting in ways both ordinary and extraordinary. Above them, stars punctuated the darkness, constants in a changing world. Quite a year, Ethan mused his arm around her waist. Quite a lifetime, Sophia corrected gently, with hopefully many more good years ahead. The orange paper crane sat on the ledge beside them, a fragile symbol of resilience and hope. Like the mythical phoenix that had given their center its name, they had emerged from destruction, not unchanged but renewed stronger, for having been broken wiser, for having lost their way, more complete, for having found each other against all odds. This is just the beginning, Ethan said, his voice carrying certainty born not of naivety, but of hard-won experience. The real work is still ahead of us. Sophia leaned into his embrace, accepting both the challenge and the promise his words contained. Then it's a good thing we're not doing it alone. The night air carried the scent of new beginnings, fresh paint from the renovated center, blooming flowers from the memorial garden, possibility unfurling like the pages of a story still being written. Not a perfect ending, for there was no such thing in lives honestly lived, but a perfect moment to be treasured even as they moved forward into whatever came next. Their journey had begun with violence and fear in an underground parking garage, a CEO in danger, a former employee risking everything to help two single parents trying to protect their daughters in a dangerous world. It continued now with purpose and hope, with a center dedicated to preventing others from suffering similar fates, with a family forged through crisis and choice. Heroes are just people who don't walk away. The children's wisdom echoed in Sophia's mind as she gazed out at the city before them. She and Ethan weren't heroes from storybooks or movies, but simply people who had refused to look away when confronted with injustice, who had chosen again and again to stay and fight rather than retreat to safety, who had built something meaningful from the wreckage of what came before. That choice to stay, to rebuild, to hope, had given them everything that mattered: each other, their daughters, purpose beyond profit. A life measured not in acquisitions, but in impacts, not in power, but in positive change. As they stood together under the stars, the future stretched before them, not guaranteed or certain, but possible in all the ways that mattered most. Whatever challenges it held, they would face them together, stronger for everything they had already overcome, determined to keep choosing courage over convenience, integrity over expediency, love over fear. And in that choice lay all the difference.